Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Sumukascha Yekadantascha Kapilo Gajakarnakaha Lambodharascha Vikato Vignarajo Vinayakaha Dhrumaketur Ganadhyakshaha Phalachandro Gajananaha Vakratundaha Surpakarno Herambhaha Skandapurvajaha Shuklambaradharam Vishnum Sasivarnam Chaturbhujam Prasannavadanam Dhyayet Sarva Vignopasanteye Yasyadgaradavaktraadhyaha Parishadhyaha Parastatam Vignum Vignunti Sapatam Vishpaksenam Tamastraye Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheswaraha Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Satchidananda Rupaya Krishnaya Aklishtakarine Namo Vedanta Vedhyaya Gurave Buddhisakshine Krishna Dvaipaya Namjasam Sarvabhuta Hiteratam Vedabjabhaskaram Vande Samadhi Nilayam Munim Janmadhyasya Yataha Anvayate Itaratascha Arteshu Abhignasasvarat Kene Brahma Huda Yaha Adi Kavaye Mukhyanti Yat Surayaha Kejovari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yat Ritru Padgo Vrisha Dhamna Sena Sada Nivasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Dharmaha Prochidha Kaitavotra Paramo Nidmat Charanam Satam Vedhyam Vastavam Atravastu Sivadam Tapatrayon Molanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krute Kimva Paririshvaraha Sadhyo Hridi Avaruddhyatehe Atra Kritibhi Sushidhi Takshanat Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Palam Sukamukad Amrita Dravasam Yutam Kripata Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhuraho Rasikaha Bhuvi Bhavukaha Yam Prabrajantam Anupetam Apeta Krutyam Dvaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti Tan Mayataya Taravaha Abhimeduhutam Sarvabhuta Hridayam Muni Manatosmi Yahat Svanubhavam Akila Srutisaram Ekam Adhyatma Deepam Atititi Shatam Tamon Dhama Samsarinam Karunayah Purana Gukhyam Tam Vyasasunum Upayami Gurum Muninam Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet. Now with Swami's grace we will continue to partake a brief summary of the nectarine messages in Skandham 2. Today we will take up the Bhagavata Lakshanam, Purana Lakshanangal, what is the Adayalam, the characteristics, the important requirements for a Purana. Okay, not everything can become a Puranam. There are 10 very important characteristics, and that we are going to learn from Sukamuni himself. So we will let us start. Now, when Sukha, very beautifully, the problem here is we have to begin right here because it is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. Okay, let me begin here today. So Sukha asked Parikshit, King, you are so keen on hearing the stories and glories of Bhagavan. You keep pestering me, you keep on asking me to repeatedly to tell you so much. And so how can the mind be established in the lotus feet of the Lord if the ears listen to the characteristics and activities of the Lord? What is your opinion on this point? Tell me. Sukha was smiling at him and asked a question. Then Parikshit said, Swami, there is really no distinction between God, His name, and His attributes. Is that correct? This is what I believe. So when the story of Bhagavan is narrated and listened to, the name of the Lord and attributes enter the heart through the ears and disperse the darkness of ignorance, isn't it? And when the lion enters the forest, the timid jackals flee with their tails between their legs, don't they? The sincere listener will certainly fix his mind on what he heard through the ear. While listening rapturously to the ravishing attributes of Bhagavan, with a captivating smile, the mind will also be so attached to the sweetness derived thereby that it can no more be attracted by low and vulgar objects, isn't it? The ear and the mind will both act in unison. That alone will yield ananda. But Sukha said, Parikshit, king, the mind is inconstancy of its very nature. It cannot be constant. How can it give up its nature and attach itself to the lotus feet of the Lord? It is not an impossible feat. Sukha was attempting to gauge the feelings that filled the mind of Parikshit. Parikshit smiled and replied, Swami, I will answer if you kindly permit me and direct me to do so. The bee will hover around the flower, humming and rolling until it settles down to drink the nectar from it. Once it has entered the flower and tasted the nectar, it will hover and hum and roll no more. It will have no extraneous thought to disturb its bliss. It will become so intoxicated with the bliss that it will not heed its own safety, because when the petals close and the flower folds, it allows itself to be imprisoned inside it. Similarly, when once the mind settles on the lotus feet of the embodiment of beauty and goodness, it can never more crave for anything except the nectar of the lotus feet. When Sukha heard this answer, he was very happy. He said, King, since your heart is merged in Shyamasundara, Bhagavan Krishna, I'm pleased so much that you can ask me all the questions that trouble you. I'll give you appropriate answers and explanation. I will thrill you and heighten your yearning for Shyamasundara, the charming Lord with the complexion of dark, rain-heavy clouds. Then Parikshit asked him several questions. And then, after he finished all the questions, so many questions he asked, Sukha said, King, rise up. If you pile up so many questions all in a heap, how can you understand the answers? Moreover, you have not slaked your thirst or eaten any food for a long time. Come, eat some fruit and drink a little milk at least. There the privilege of the rights of the physical body. With a famished body, you may pass away in the middle with your house unresolved. So take some food. Sukha ordered him. The king replied, O master, those whose last days have come should not prefer the food that nourishes the falsehood to the food that grants immortality. How can I pass away in the middle, though the body may be famished, when I'm imbibing the nectar of immortality, and when you're filling me with the exhilaration of tasting sweet panacea for the illness of death? No, it will not happen, Swami. Even if the angry Shringi had not cursed me, even if the snake Takshaka had not been deputed to kill me after 7 days, I would not pass away in the middle while listening to the stories of Bhagavam. I listen to them without thought of food and drink. My food, my drink are the nectarine stories of Krishna. So please do not think about food and drink. Make me fit for the highest bliss, the supreme stage of realization. Save me from downfall and prostrating at your feet. So then Sukha said, in the beginning, Brahma shed light on the world manifested by Maya or delusion. And then Brahma willed the creation might proliferate. Butterflies from the above said from Akasa, tapas is the essential basis for everything. Through tapas, delusion will disappear. And this Parikshit intervened. He said, Swami, What is the meaning and value of tapas? Please enlighten me. Sukha took this interruption kindly. He said, son, tapas means sadhana, discipline, spiritual exercise. It is through tapas that the great process of creation, preservation, and destruction are all happening. Tapas is the cause for the realization of the self. That is to say, when the mind, the intellect, and the senses are subjected to tapas, or the crucible of disciplinary exercise, the self will stand revealed. I will tell you about this technique of tapas. Listen. The mind, the intellect, and the senses are ever bent towards exterior objects. They are perpetually turned outward. When some sound from the external world strikes it, the ear hears it. As soon as the ear hears it, the eye attempts to see it. When the eye sees it, the mind desires it. Immediately, the intellect approves the idea and sets about to acquire it as quickly as possible. Thus, every sense runs after external objects, one after the other, one supporting the other, restless and miserable. One must bring under control the mind, the reasoning faculty, and the senses, which roam aimlessly behind objective pleasures. One must train them to take on the task of concentrating all attention on the glory and majesty of God, to follow one systematic course of one-pointed discipline. Bring them all and lead them towards the higher path. Their unlicensed behavior has to be curbed. They must be educated by means of japa, dhyana, or good service, good works, or some other dedicatory and elevating activity that purifies. The process of purifying the inner equipment of man in the crucible of single-pointed speech, feeling, and activity directed towards God is called tapas. The inner consciousness will be rid of all blemishes and defects. When the inner consciousness has been rendered pure and unsullied, God will reside therein. Finally, he will experience the vision of Bhagavam himself within him. Then the Sukamuni continued, and then he continues, and he says, King, all things that are seen are transient, unreal. God alone is eternal and real. Attachment with object ends in grief. God is one's own reality. That reality, the God in you, has no relationship with the changing, transitory, objective world. He is pure consciousness only. Even if you posit some relation on it, it can only be the type of relationship that exists between the dreamer and the object seen and experienced in dreams. Then the king asked a question. He said, Swami, on this matter a doubt is bothering me. In dreams, only those things that have been cognized directly while awake appear. And so there must be reality as the basis of the false appearance, isn't it? Now, while experiencing a dream, all the objects are taken to be real. On waking from sleep, it is realized that they are all unreal. But this is the experience of us men. But can God also be deluded? Again, if objects are one and of uniform type, then it can be said that Maya deludes and this is the effect. But the objects are manifold and multifarious forms are there. They all appear real and true. How can this be compared to the dream experience, Swami? Sukha laughed at this question. He said, King, Maya itself has caused these multifarious forms. This is the clever stage play, a kind of fancy dress. The objective world or nature assumes manifold forms through the manipulations of Maya, the deluding urge. On account of the primary impulse of Maya, the gunas got intermixed and time manifested with the change, and all this multiplicity called the universe appeared. So he continues to explain. So the Jivi must dedicate himself to the master of this illusion. Then, as Sukha was explaining, he said, Sukha was continuing, he said, the man must fill himself with the understanding of immeasurable power and glory of the Akshara Param Brahma, the imperishable absolute. He must immerse himself in the bliss derivable therefrom. Then he sheds all ajnana and can be unattached even when he uses the creations of Maya. King was struck with wonder at these words of the sage. He said, Swami, how did this creation first happen? What is the original substance which Maya caused to proliferate? Then Sukha elaborated this point. He said, creation is happening from beyond the beginning of time. First, the lotus arose from the navel of the primal person, called in the scriptures Narayana. From this lotus, the Lord himself manifested as Brahma. Brahma felt an urge to look at all the four quarters, so he developed four phases. Then Brahma became aware that he must activate himself so the creation can happen. So he seated himself in the Padmasana posture of yoga and entertained the idea of all this creation. Parikshit, the mystery of creation cannot be unraveled so easily or understood so quickly. There can be no cause-consequence chain in the activities of the Absolute. No one can examine or inquire successfully into the creative faculty and achievements of the Supreme, which is omnipotent and omniscient. King, when I was just attempting to answer these questions that you had asked me earlier, you came forward with another. Perhaps you thought that I might forget to give you the answers for those in the eagerness to answer the latest question. No. Don't worry. You will certainly be enlightened on all the points you raised during the coming narration of the Bhagavata story. All your questions are within the bounds of the Puranas. Then Parikshit says, Swami, what is a Purana? Please, what are their contents? How many are there? And Sukha replied, the texts that elaborate the first truths that are enshrined in the Vedas are called Purana. They are numberless in extent, but at present, 18 of them are outstandingly famous. Those were collated and edited by my father Vyasa. They have 10 common characteristics. The supplements to these Puranas, called Upapuranas, have 5 characteristics only. Now you may ask what those 10 are. I will tell them to you even before you ask. They are Sarga, Visarga, Sthana, Poshana, Uti, Manvantara, Isamu Charita, Nirodha, Mukti, and Asreya. The Asreya is the most important of these 10. Sukha continued. He said, if these 10 characteristics of the Puranas have to be described in a few words, it will be very hard, because each has to be indicated clearly, as when the processes of butter making have to be described. Each item from the milking to the churning has to be touched upon. Each step is important. The 10 names relate to the attributes as marked out by their meanings. But the purpose of all is the gaining of the butter, the liberation. It is for the attainment of that liberation that the 10 characteristics are assumed. The Puranas are all designed to confer on the eager and earnest listener the support and sustenance necessary for the pilgrim proceeding to liberation. What the Vedas indicate by means of a statement here or an axiom there, or by an implied suggestion in another context, or even by a direct description of the actual experience in some other section is elaborated by the Purana for better clarification and inspiration. Now, question arose in Parikshit's mind. He said, Master, you said that you'll be relating a Purana to me. Therefore, I'd like to hear more about these characteristics. That will make the listening happier and more beneficial. Sukha made ready to answer this question, starting the description of the 10 marks, the characteristics, the lakshana of the Purana. He said, listen, King, I have decided to relate to you the Bhagavata Purana. It is saturated with answers for all the doubts that arise in your mind and all your questions. There is no Purana higher than this. Of its characteristics, the first one, namely, is Sarga. Now, I will tell you what it means. When the three gunas or attributes, Sattva, Rajasic, and Tamas, are in equilibrium, it is called Prakriti, the primordial substance or the Mula. Now, by the disturbances in the equilibrium or disbalance, the 5 elements are produced: earth, water, fire, wind, and sky. Also, the subtle attributes of these 5, smell, taste, form, touch, and sound, creating also as the subtle senses that can cognize each: the nose, the tongue, the eye, the skin, and the ear. The mind and the ego too arise from the same principle. This process of creation is what is meant by the expression Sarga. The second mark of a Purana is Nisarga. That is to say, Sarga or creation in a special sense. The proliferation into manifold varieties of beings through the interaction of the various oddities and peculiarities in activity is what is described as Nisarga. It is intimately associated with the all-embracing Paramatma in whom the universe is immanent. The third content of a Purana is Sthanam. Everything that is originated in the universe must have some bounds, limits, so that it may serve some purpose. The fixation of these limits and the processes by which the limits are honored are all described in the section called Sthanam, entitled Sthanam, or state. A machine, for example, has a key by which alone it can be started. It has also devices by which its work is regulated and stopped. Otherwise, it will be a source of danger to itself and to its users. The establishment of such regulatory devices is a subject comprised under Sthanam. The next distinguishing mark of a Purana is the inclusion in it of a section on Poshana, fostering, guarding, preservation from harm. To put the matter simply, all fostering, guidance, and preservation are included in the one comprehensive subject of divine grace, Devanugraham. The sapling that is planted has to be fostered with love and care. All creation is thus fostered by the grace of the Creator. The next characteristic is Manvantara, the chronology of Manu, which every Purana contains. The day is composed of 8 yamas. 30 such days make a month. 12 months are called a year. 1 year for this world is just a day for the gods. 360 such days form a year for them. The Kali Yuga or the Kali age is composed of 1,000 Deva years. The previous Dwapara Yuga had 2,000 Deva years, while the Treta Yuga, which preceded it, had 3,000. And the Krita, which was the first of the 4 yugas, had 4,000. In addition, each yuga has 200, 400, 600, or 800 contact periods or Sandhya periods. 12,000 such years comprise a Mahayuga. 1,000 such Mahayugas form a single day for Brahma. Every day of Brahma sees 14 Manus, lording the universe. So each Manu is a master for more than 40 Mahayugas. The story of these Manus and their lineage is named Manvantara. Next sign of the Purana is Uti. Uti means the consequence of the activity, its impact on one's nature and career. The nature of each life is determined by the impact of the activities of the entity in previous life. It is not assigned by a wayward God. No. God treats all alike. Men force their states differently through their own waywardness and willfulness. Uti deals with this aspect. Isamu Katha is another subject dealt with in the Puranas. It means the glories of Isa or God and the manifold ways in which men have experienced the might and majesty, the sweetness and the light that the glory represents, Bhagavan represents. Then we find in the Puranas the Lakshana or aspect dealing with Nirodha or absorption. The Lord absorbs within himself all the glory that he makes manifest. He then goes into the sleep of yoga until the divine impulse to manifest again disturbs the divine equipoise. Mukti is another subject all Puranas dilate upon. It means the liberation of man from the bonds of ignorance, ajnana, which keep him encased. That is to say, man has to be liberated from the awareness that he is the body in which he is encased. He has to be liberated from this awareness. He must be made aware that he is the Atma, the soul, which is the reality, thus encased in the body. Astreya is the final aspect dealt with in the Purana. It means the help, the support, the prop. Without help, liberation cannot be attained. The Absolute, Bhagavan, is the prop for the universe. Paramatma, from which all this has emanated, in which all this exists, into which all this merges, is a prop for achieving liberation. He who knows the Adi Bhautik, the Adi Dhaivik, and Adi Atma, by that very knowledge, knows the Asreya and the Paramatma too. Then Parikshit interrupted. He said, Swami, tell me what are Adi Bhautik, the Adi Dhaivik, and the Adi Atma are. And then the teaching continues. Okay, so let me just cover that aspect in the time that we have, since it's an important question. So when Parikshit said, please, Swami, tell me what the Adi Bhautik, the Adi Dhaivik, and the Adi Atma are, Sukha was happy when the question was put. He prepared himself for answering it. He said, O king, I see a thing. That thing is Adi Bhautik. But what exactly is seeing it? You may say the eye sees it. Where from does the eye get the capacity to see things? Think of that. The deity, the Deva, presiding over the eye is the sun, Surya. He gives the eye the power of vision. Now, without the sun in the dark, the eye cannot see, isn't it? The sun, therefore, is Adi Dhaivik. But there is one more basic factor in this process, the Jivi, the individual behind all the senses, behind the eye and the ear and the rest. That individual is the Atma, the Adi Atma. The Atma, the deity, the senses that bring knowledge of things. Without these, the process cannot continue. The Atma is the witness. Now, I've told you of the 10 characteristics of the Bhagavata and other Puranas. Now tell me what else you desire to know from me, and I'll gladly relate to you the same. I'm ever ready, said Sukha. With that, we will conclude for today and our brief summary of Skandham 2. Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Samastalokaha Sukino Bhavantu Samastalokaha Sukhino bhavantu samastalokaha. Sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om.